Hello, we're going to do some more compound inequalities. So last time we did inequalities, we had two options. We had ands and ors, and you still have ands and ors. But an and always looked like Baymax's face, like that. And ors always looked like this. Well, that's not how it works out in real life. So we're going to look at the other ways that it can look. So this is Compound Inequalities Part 2. I call them special cases. They're not special cases. It's just other things that can happen. Okay? So this symbol, we need to know these symbols because they're in Delta Math. I snipped these from Delta Math. So you need to know what they are. A zero or a circle with a line through it means no solution. Or, I mean, you can call it anything. At the end of the day, it means the same thing. Null is its official name. Null means nothing. Okay, so no solution, nothing. Like that, okay? What it looks like for today is, there's your number line. Well, it's nothing, right? So nothing there. That's what it looks like. I'm done. Okay. It happens when we have an and statement where there's no overlap. Okay, so we'll see that today. This fancy schmancy looking R thing means it officially means all real solutions. Real meaning all real numbers. Okay. We have real numbers, and this opens up a conversation. We have imaginary numbers too. They're not actually imaginary, and don't worry about them. But that's where the R comes from. It stands for real. Okay, and where this one means nothing, all real solutions means everything. So this would look like a number line, and your entire answer is the entire number line. Like this is what you put in, arrow to arrow. And this happens when we have an or statement that does overlap. Again, we'll see that today, of course. Okay, we know how to solve for inequalities. I'm not going to continually go over that for the sake of time. If you need help with that, look at the 7.1 video. But beyond that, I am going to, first, I'm going to emphasize you need to graph first. This is where graphing first is going to super duper save you some time. It's going to help you see it visually before you try to write it, because it's not going to, look perfect like it did last class every day. So let's practice from last class. So this is going to be a level 1. This is going to be kind of what we did last video. We would solve for the inequalities, and we would get 2 is less than or equal to x, and solve for the other one, we would get x less than or equal to 5. So I'm going to graph first. I've got a closed circle on 2. I'm saying 2 is less than x, so 2 has to be less. Everything else has to be bigger. So I'm going to go to the right here. And then closed circle on 5. I'm saying x is less than 5, so everything's smaller than 5. We're going to go this way. It's an and statement, so that's when I'm keeping the overlap. Everything else needs to go away. So this part I'm keeping, everything else goes in the garbage. I get Baymax's face. That's my final, and it's written in one piece. If I write it in one piece in the number line, I have to write it in one piece up top. And when it's an and statement, I have to squish it together. So I'm going to do 2x and 5, and If I plug that together, then I get less than or equal to, Okay. So then I'd hit submit and I'd get it right and it would be awesome. Okay, that's from last class. Today we got our quote-unquote special cases, things that can happen a little differently. So again, I'm not going to solve for them. I'm just going to say what they end up being for the sake of time. So we solve this one, we get x is less than 1 and x is less than 7. So I'm going to graph first. So this was step 1, we're solving the inequality. Step 2 is I'm going to graph. So I'm going to start on 1, open circle. I'm going to start up here so we can see everything that goes on. I'm saying x is less than 1, so everything's smaller than 1. X is less than 7, so I'm going to go open circle on 7, go this way. Okay. So they're both less than, so I went to the left both times. This is where it becomes different, right? When I graphed it, I didn't get Baymax's eyes or a gap in the middle. They're both going the same way. It is an and statement. I know that because it told me. And when it's an and, I only keep where it overlaps. So if I'm going from left to right like this, do you see how they start overlapping right here and then they go forever and ever? That's great. I'm going to keep all that. But this piece right here, it's going to go away. There's no overlap. I only want where this inequality and this one apply at the same time. Because x is less than 7 is the only one right here, I don't care about it anymore. It doesn't count. I'm throwing it away. So my final for this one, open circle because that's what I have, on 1, and I would go off to the left everywhere that they overlap, forever and ever. If I write it in one piece, like I did, then this up here has to be one piece. But notice I threw away the 7. So I'm going to throw away the 7. All I have is everything less than 1. So I'm only going to write x is less than 1 up here. Okay, that's where it gets a little tricky, gets a little different. And that's why we need to graph first, so that we can see that I threw away everything that the 7 gave me. And I'm only keeping everything less than 1. Okay, so that would be step 3, is writing it in there. And then I'd be done. I don't need to squish anything together. I don't need to write, 2 numbers like this. I don't need to go do that because I threw away the 7 piece. So then I threw away the 7 piece and I only wrote the 1 piece because that's all I have left. Okay? So if we can think that way, this will get a lot easier. I'm going to do this next one a little bit faster. We're going to skip solving again. This one becomes -5 is less than x. This one becomes 3 is greater than or equal to x. Okay, let's graph first. -5 is greater than x. So that's going to be -5 open circle. And then 3 closed circle. -5, 3 is less than x, so everything has to be bigger. Okay. That's great. Except this is an and statement. Remember, with an and, we keep the overlap only. And yet down here there's nowhere that it overlaps. So remember what I said before in the video. Okay. No solution happens when we have an and statement that does not overlap. And that's exactly what we have. So I'm going to come up here and I find my little null or no solution button, I put it in there, you will write nothing. You won't even write this. You'll delete this. You will leave the number line completely blank. And you'll hit submit. You'll be done. Okay? And those are your two options for and special cases. So, to recap for ands, you can have no solution, where it's just a blank number line. You can have like the x is less than 1, where you have one line going one way. And you can have Baymax's eyes. And that's when you have like a number less than x less than another number. And it looks like that. Those are your and options. Okay, let's look at your or options. Remember, your first or option is you keep everything and there's a gap in the middle and the two arrows go out forever in opposite directions. Okay, but let's look at your other options for what an or case can look like. Solving for x, I would get -4 is greater than x, and I get 5 is greater than x. And I'm going to graph them. Remember, or you keep everything. So everything you have, you keep it. We're going to do open circle on -4. And I'm saying -4 is greater, so everything else needs to be less. Let's go that way. 5 is greater than x. Open circle on 5. Everything needs to be less. Okay, so this should look a lot like our first and case that we had up here. Okay, except with that one, we kept only where they started overlapping. But when it's an or statement, I don't care if they overlap or not. I keep it all. So I'm going to have everything. Everything that I put, I have it. My final, my final graph would look like this. Open circle, because that's what I have. And I would have everything to the arrow and on. Like that. So I'm starting at 5, and I wrote this in one piece, right? I had the open circle and I drug it all the way over here to the arrow, and then I was done. One piece. So I have to write it in this box in one piece. Notice that my 5 is greater than x line envelops my -4 is greater than x line. So, like the last one where we threw away the x is less than 7 one, like this one where we got rid of this, we're going to kind of do the same thing. Okay, this one includes this one, so I can just write this. I don't have to write that because it's included. So I would write this. I would have my line graphed starting at open circle on 5 to the left. I would hit submit and I'd be done. Okay. Remember, if you write it in one piece down here, you have to write it in one piece up here. Last one, almost done. Solving for x, we have 3 is less than x, and x is less than 12. I'm going to graph it first, and I get 3 is less than x, so everything has to be bigger, and x is less than 12, so 12 up here, open circle, everything's smaller. Okay. I overlap, so if I had an and statement, then I would only be keeping this piece. But I have an or statement, so I keep everything. But everything, in this case, is literally everything. Arrow to arrow. So my final graph would look like this. Arrow, never pick up my pen, to arrow. Literally everything. Okay? And we had a little letter, we had a little button that told us everything. Remember, this one was nothing. This one, though, means everything. And that's usually how people, this is usually how people draw it with a pen. Okay, Delta Math will give you the fancier looking R, but this means all real solutions, literally everything, arrow to arrow. So again, to recap, your ands, you can have no solution where the number line is empty. You can have x is less than 1 like this, where you have one arrow going one way, or you can have Baymax's eyes. Those are your 3 options on Delta Math. Those are your 3 options for an and in general. Okay. For an or, that's when you keep everything. You can have literally everything, all real solutions. Your graph goes from arrow to arrow. You can have our one up here where you have one arrow going one way. So what was the x is, or 5 is greater than x? Okay, or you can have our traditional one that we had from level 1. Okay, it was, you can have like x is less than a number, or x is greater than a number. Oh, I put the same sign twice. Like that. And it would look like this. So here's my number line, and then I have a gap in the middle. 2 arrows going 2 different ways. Okay, so at the end of the day, you have 6 options, 3 per word, and or. Okay. Honestly, like, compound inequalities are my favorite. It ends up being a lot of fun. It's like a little puzzle you put together, but there are a lot of details. I hope I organized them out a little bit better for you. But let's try the homework out and email me if you have any questions. Thank you.